quale? Maybe.
Hello. Okay. Yes. Okay. Hello. Good evening, everyone. Hi. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming to this last talk of the DDD, Digital Delights and Disturbances lecture series. This is the last but not the least, and in fact I feel that this is actually probably the most important panel that we have been hosting this term for Digital Delights and Disturbances. I hope you can hear me, no? Yes? Okay. Yes? Does that sound okay? No? No. I think this one is better. Okay, okay. So welcome again. Yes, sorry, my bad. Welcome again. Thank you for coming tonight to the last talk of Digital Delights and Disturbances. I am extremely grateful to my friend and colleague Francesca Caferri for having facilitated this talk tonight, and also I want to thank Arianna and Chris from the Journalism Festival in Perugia, because Ghousoon and Meron are just coming back from Perugia. You might know that there is an amazing international journalism festival that actually just was here in Perugia, was happening the past weekend. So it just came to an end yesterday. And so this is the reason why we have the opportunity to have this guest with us tonight, talking about Plus 972 magazine and local call and independent journalism in Israel, Palestine. Basically, just to give a little bit of background, Plus 975 magazine is an independent, non-profit online publication which was funded by a collective of Palestinian and Israeli journalists. And its mission is to deliver in-depth reporting, analysis, and commentary from the ground in Israel, Palestine. As you can imagine, I mean, the organization, which was established in 2010, so a long time ago, in media terms, was already extremely important to have such an organization in the context of Israel, Palestine, but became really urgent and very much needed in light of the post-October 7th attack, and in light of the genocidal war on Gaza. The work that they have been doing has been praised internationally. They recently got the 2025 Lions Award for Conscience and Integrity in Journalism from Harvard University, so it's a great prize that they just got, and several of the journalists that are affiliated with the Plus 972 are also involved in the making of No Other Land, the documentary who just won the Oscar, as you know. So unfortunately we don't have the Yuval Abraham, who was in Perugia as well, but we have great colleagues and journalists who can also talk about the film. So today we have the honor to have with us Ghousoon Bisharat, the editor-in-chief of Plus 972 magazine, and also a strategic communications and international cooperation expert who has more than 20 years of experience working with leading international broadcast news outlets and also the European Union. And also Meron Rapoport, who is an award-winning journalist in Israel and also the former head of news at Israeli newspaper Haaretz, which you might know. And he is also a contributor to several international publications, among them The Guardian, and also the co-author of this groundbreaking investigation on the use of AI in the current conflict in Gaza. And last but not least, Francesca Caferri, as I said, she facilitated the panel, and she's a journalist with the Repubblica newspaper, but also she has been covering extensively the Middle East, Syria, Israel, Palestine, and also she's the author of many books published here in Italian, mostly with Mondadori Editore, quindi a very interesting and important publisher. So this is gonna be slightly different from what we usually do at DDD, so we don't have a talk, we have a panel discussion, so I'm gonna open the floor by asking a couple of questions to each of them, but at some point I will ask if you have questions. I think it's very important. This meeting was very important for us as the Communication and Media Department here at GCU, because we want our students also to interrogate themselves about what is happening today as we speak. You know, media is about also talking about media means being involved with current events. So we should discuss current events, especially if they are very contentious as the events currently unfolding in Israel-Palestine. So I would like, first of all, to start with Ghousoon and ask her. Ghousoon is a journalist, Israeli-Palestinian journalist, and also a citizen of Israel. And as I said, she has an extensive experience in journalism and in international organization. There is no one better than her to talk about the reason why this Plus 972 was born initially in the landscape of Israeli-Palestinian media. So how the project started, who founded it, how it managed to survive also, because we are talking about independent journalism, right? So I think it's important also to ask the question of material support. How can such an organization with very specific goals, also political goals, survive in such a landscape, which is, you know, media landscape globally, not only in Israel-Palestine, is increasingly controlled by monopolies, right? So I would like to leave the floor to Ghousoon. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Donatella, for inviting us, and Francesca for all the connections that you made possible for us here in Italy. It's really great being with students in a small hall, a very cozy atmosphere, because Francesca organized for us the biggest venues in Perugia in our panels. It was scary and frightening. So now I feel like, you know, we can just chat. So I'll try to be brief, because I would like to get more questions, because the questions are always more interesting than what, you know, I'm going to say. You always, media students in particular, I was one of, just like you, many years ago, and I feel media students are the best audience for asking questions, and sometimes your questions make us think about stuff that, you know, we don't think about in our daily work. So I'll start talking about 972. I was not one of the founders. I only joined 972 in September 23, so just a couple of weeks before the war. As Donatella said, I'm a Palestinian citizen of Israel. There are about 2 million Palestinians living in Israel, and they comprise about 20% of the Israeli population. So I'm one of them. I was born and raised in Nazareth, went to study communications and media at the Hebrew University in Jerusalem, and then worked with legacy media for many years. I started with ABC as a news producer in Jerusalem, and it's a great, great honor to have one of my mentors here, Clark Benson. Clark is one of the best producers I've known, and I worked with him a lot during my first, you know, days in journalism. I then worked for ABC, then Sky News, and then Al Jazeera English as a news producer covering Israel-Palestine. I then went off to London, did my master's in political communications, and then came back home and worked as a program manager and communication officer for the European Union delegation, like the EU embassy in Tel Aviv in Israel. And then came back to the first love, which is journalism. And I didn't want to go to one of the big legacy, you know, mainstream media channels. You know, I've done it. I just felt I just want to have more impact. I want to be, you know, part of something small, but with much bigger role and bigger impact. And then me and 972 found each other somehow. And despite the impossible conditions and the, you know, very brief, you know, bad situation since October 7th and the war on Gaza, I would say it is, you know, one of the most important stations in my career. I've been there for a year and a bit now, and I don't wish any other workplace, especially during, you know, this war and this very difficult time. So I was not there, but I know a little bit about the history, so I will share with you a little bit about the history of 972. It was founded in 2010 by mainly a group of Israeli, you know, Jewish Israeli journalists and activists who could not take the narrative of the international media about Israel-Palestine anymore. And they felt that they had to do something. They were all involved in different sort of journalism work with international media, with Israeli media, but they decided, especially after the war on Gaza in 2009, that something has to change in the discourse. Other voices should be represented in English from Israel-Palestine, and they were joined by maybe, I think in the beginning, by 1 or 2 Palestinian journalists, but it started mainly by Jewish Israeli journalists, and it started as a blog. They were bloggers. Their pieces were not edited, you know, they just wrote in English and published. If you go back to old articles, there's some amazing stuff, but it's just like bloggers who, something happened in the West Bank, they got annoyed, they went back and wrote something and published. And it took, you know, some good years, I think 4 or 5 years, until the group decided that, you know, we are amplifying the important voices from the ground, getting some recognition in order to continue and not die maybe as a blog. We have to get a bit more professional. And then they started, you know, getting a bit more professional, having editors, editing texts, hiring reporters, and the business model as well changed. If you hire people, you need more money. And slowly, also the identity of the website changed. It became more and more binational. In the beginning, it was mainly Jewish Israelis. And now, you know, it took a long time, but in 2014, we had a percentage of about 50.7 of Palestinian contributors throughout the year. Contributors, I mean, you know, reporters, analysts, academics, actors from the culture field, from any field, writing op-eds. And we are trying, you know, very hard to maintain that percentage, and even a bit higher, because we are aware of the asymmetries between those who are present in the international media discourse, and there are many more Jewish Israelis, even from the left side of the map, than Palestinians. And I would say that 972 is a work in progress. You know, the identity changed because the reality in the ground has changed as well. And we are trying very hard now to get to these percentages, 50 and 50, you know, and more percent of women writers. Like we have an issue. In 2014, we had about 30% female contributors and 70% men. And, you know, I'm leading the organization, and still it's not easy. You know, we always wanted more women, whether Jews or Palestinians, Jewish Israelis or Palestinians, or contributors from all around the world who write about Israel-Palestine. We would like to have more female voices. You know, as you know, I'm sure that you're following the news, you know, Palestinian and women in particular are not present in the Palestinian politics. You mainly hear men talking about, Palestine, and I think it's pretty bad on the Jewish-Israeli side as well. So we would like to have more of these voices, of course. We are a very small team. We are right now 6 people working, 3 full-time editors, myself, an amazing intern, and we just hired a couple of months ago a social media and audience engagement person. And hopefully soon we're going to have a reporter from East Jerusalem. We have Yuval Avraham, who wrote all the AI investigations and reported intensively for 972 and Local Call even before these investigations. And also, it's a great honor for us to say he's an Oscar winner as well. So we have an Oscar winner among our team. He's divided between Local Call and 972.
We have 2 Oscar winners.
And we have Basil Adra, who is the co-director. He's a regular contributor for 972 and Local Call. He used to work for Local Call, then he left, joined B'Tselem, one of the human rights organizations, and now he will be back after he will finish with his Oscar, tour, hopefully writing more for us and for Local Call. So in 2014, what happened is that 972 became a legal entity as well. And there's an NGO called Plus 972 Advancement for Citizen Journalism, which is registered in Israel and is the publisher of 972 magazine, together with an organization called Just Vision, an American organization that works on filling the gaps about Israel-Palestine in American media and society. Together, the 2 NGOs decided to co-publish and are still, to co-found and are still the co-publishers of Local Call, Sicha Mekomit in Hebrew, which Meron will talk about more. We are 2 different editorial teams. We have 2 different audiences as well, but we cooperate a lot. Many of the Local Call reporters, contributors are being, they also write for 972, or their material is translated and published on 972, and the same for many of our writers are translated to Hebrew, their articles, and they're published in Hebrew. The most important bunch of our work that has been translated to Hebrew in the last year, and Meron will talk more about it, is the contributions of our writers from Gaza. We have a network of 5 to 6 freelance reporters from Gaza. 3 of them left between February to April last year, but we have 3 who are still writing from Gaza and are still there. As I said, we are like the most important characteristic of who we are is being fiercely, genuinely independent. We have no political affiliation with any party in the Holy Land, in Israel-Palestine. We have no corporate or business or whatever constraints at all. Our editorial decisions are only ours. And I think the work that we have done in the last year showed how important it is to have independent journalism, who can be, fierce and, very fierce, and has the courage to challenge power in the way that we did it. Our financial model, I wish our executive director is here because he's in charge of that, and I don't deal with fundraising and this is part of our editorial independence, is not directly dealing with fundraising. So I would say around 40% of our budget comes today from our members, who can contribute monthly small amounts like $25 per month or $500 per month. And this is the group that is sustaining us financially and keeping us independent. And the second group is mainly philanthropy coming mainly from the US. I can, also just maybe share with you that, we were really a small media outlet before, and we are still small, but our reach was also very small up until October 23. We had an average of 20,000 readers every month. Of course, page reviews were much higher, but like readers who go in and click on not only the main page but go into articles were around 20,000. Since October, our average is around 120,000. So we went up by tenfold increase in the readership. The international recognition is also, we feel like we went from maybe 10 to 1,000. It's massive, but with it comes greater responsibility. It's even scary sometimes, like to get that recognition when you're small and trying to change reality. What is really frustrating is that with all this important work that we did, and not only the investigations but also the investigations, is that the reality on the ground is even worse, day by day, and we are hoping for at least the end of the war so we can just breathe a little bit and think about what could come after. And I believe that next to the investigations that if you have questions we can talk about it more. The investigations went from AI and the way Israel is using AI in this war, in its massive killing machine, to conditions of Palestinian prisoners in Israeli detention centers and jails, and the torture and the extremely illegal treatment, to investigations on the communities that have been displaced and the ethnic cleansing that is happening in the West Bank. In addition to all of that, I think one of the most important things that we did is that from day one, we, I don't know what's the best word, but the platform was open for our Gaza journalists to report their story on their own, to own the narrative and to tell the story and to use their bylines on their own. We don't have somebody sitting in London or in Haifa even, where I sit now, or in Tel Aviv or in Jerusalem, adding information, gathering stuff from different sources and adding his name or her name next to the Gaza reporter. It was mainly Mohammed Mhawish, Mahmoud Mushtaha, Ruwaida Amir, Ibtisam Mahdi, some who wrote using pseudonyms as well. And I invite you to go to their pages and read their stuff and the reporting and analysis. It was them who wrote the stories. They owned the story, they owned the narrative, and it's perhaps one of the most challenging things that we have done, because there were periods where there were blackouts. We had no communications with them because the telecommunication infrastructure was also targeted. And it wasn't easy getting stuff. Like many times I remember one of the photojournalists, Mohammed Zanoun, who is now in Europe, he couldn't really send a piece, but he sent me voice messages all along the day with photos that arrived really late, and we made the photo essay. But it was his words, his photos. We get sometimes material in Arabic, we translate and edit. Of course, we double check, we fact check, we always get, whenever is needed as well, comments from the Israeli army or from whatever Israeli side that need to comment on the information. But I do believe that next to the investigations, the work of the journalists from Gaza was equally important. And I would also just finish with telling you that one of the most interesting things about the investigations that we did, especially on AI or conditions of Palestinian prisoners in Israeli jails, and that many of this information was not very new. It was only, it was already reported by many Palestinian journalists, including our own team. And here came, the stamp from Israeli sources confirming some of the information, and of course adding lots of other pieces of information that are very important, but many of these investigations confirmed what has been already reported.
Thank you. I think this was like really, thank you so much. You have summarized like the milestones you've been going through, and I think it's very important also, since we are in a university, we studied journalism, to underline that, they started as a bloggers platform, So you see that when you have good ideas, good writers, and the energy, with a clear vision to do something, then you can get to amazing results, such as winning an Oscar, such as being quoted from the most important news outlets in the world, So I think you should get some inspiration from this, because if they can manage this in such dear circumstances, such as Israel-Palestine, I think you can make it as well. So thank you so much for this amazing start, Ghousoon. And I would like to move on to Meron Rapoport. As I said, Meron is an award-winning journalist, and he also was the former head of news at Haaretz, which is a major player in the Israeli landscape, mediascape. I would like to ask Meron to tell us what prompted them to have a Hebrew language kind of sister organization. As she said, they are like very close one to another, but of course they write for different publics. So what was originally that pushed you to do the Hebrew language? What kind of public are you catering to? I think it's very important. We very rarely speak about Israeli public opinion. We totally ignore what the Israeli public opinion is thinking, watching, listening to. So I think it would be very important if you give us also an overview of what's going on in the Israeli media landscape, Hebrew speaking. Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you for coming, and thank you for inviting us. As Ghousoon, I was not one of the founders of Local Call. I came late, about 6 or 7 years ago. I came from more traditional journalism. I was, as Donatella said, I was working for first for the Israeli TV, Channel 12, then for Yediot Achronot, is the largest circulation newspaper, and then Haaretz for a few years, and then again TV, and then I came to Local Call. If you are talking, we are talking with media students, so my formation was not at all a journalist. I didn't think about going to be a journalist. I wanted to be a poet. I published some poetry in Hebrew. I wanted to translate Dante from the Italian, so I learned Italian. I spent a year in Firenze and then translated about 20 books from Italian. And I studied classical studies, Latin and Greek. So if you want to be a journalist, learn Greek. That's very important. But yes, I came to Local Call because the landscape, and that was of course before October 7, and now I will talk a little bit about what happened in October 7. The media landscape in Israel is quite confusing in a way. On the one hand, it's quite an independent newspapers. They are quite, they reveal, they have a lot of investigation regarding corruption. Netanyahu's case, he's now in court. It started with investigation by several journalists from Channel 13, from Haaretz, and other investigations. So you can say that in what regards democracy inside for Jews in Israel, the Israeli press is quite independent and quite courageous and does important things. But as regarding the conflict, regarding the Palestinian, it is completely, almost completely lacking of not only Palestinian voices. This is completely lacking. As Ghousoon said, 20% of Israeli citizens, I'm not talking about the Palestinians under occupation in the West Bank, in East Jerusalem, of course, in Gaza, but 20% of the Israeli citizens are Palestinian. There are, I would say, maybe one or two in the Israeli TV that are Palestinian. In the big newspapers, I think now maybe in Haaretz there's one or two. In the big newspapers there's none. Yediot Achronot, there's none, just zero. So it's not only that Palestinian voices are missing, the whole Palestinian point of view on the conflict is completely missing. And this is something that for me, as an Israeli who believed in that the core problem of Israel with corruption, democracy, all this is very important, but the core issue is the occupation, is the continuation of the occupation and the apartheid in the West Bank and Gaza is different story, worse than apartheid, but the apartheid, the occupation is what defines Israel. I had not really a place to be in. Haaretz was a place like this. At the end, I had to leave Haaretz too. From Yediot Achronot, this big newspaper, I was fired after 10 years in quite senior places in Haaretz, and in the hearing that after my being fired, they told me that the big problem with me, that they didn't know what kind of title they would have on Palestine, that maybe in the newspaper they will have some titles that are having some understanding to the Palestinian point of view. So it was very, for me, it was very narrow. And in local call from the very first, when I arrived there, just to write, I remember, I think one of the main first essays or pieces that I wrote in local call, in which I used the word apartheid, and one of my colleagues asked me, how does it feel to write apartheid without fear of your superiors that will censor you or fire you? So that was very important for me from the very first from when I began there. I think, if I'm not mistaken, again 6 years ago, 2018 or something like that. But from the beginning of the October War, I think it's hard for me to say fortunate, because this is the worst time in my life in Israel. This last 18 months, I've never experienced such a terrible period for me, and of course for my people and for the people between the river and the sea. But I think what I was fortunate, I think, in the sense of being in local call at that time, because I think we were maybe the only, I would say the only, modestly I would say the only news outlet in writing in Hebrew that yes, of course, acknowledged the terrible attack by Hamas on October 7th, the murderers, the atrocities done by Hamas on October 7th. But even on that day, even on October 8th, the first pieces that I wrote, and then Hagai Matar, the publisher of Local Call, wrote, we remember that there was October 6th, meaning that the October 7th did not come from nowhere, that before October 7th there were 55 years of occupation, that there were almost 20 years of siege on Gaza, that there was Nakba in 48. We remember the context of that October 7th came in a context. And of course, we knew from the beginning, nobody imagined that it will reach this devastating and genocidal scales that we are witnessing now, but we knew that there will be an October 8th, meaning that Israel will start a war against Gaza, and that this war has, I would even dare say, has nothing, or not nothing, has very little to do with October 7th, that it has the goals of this war, of Israel's war on Gaza, have very little to do with October 7th. That the goals of Israel's war is to make Gaza a place that is not suited for living, whether you call it genocide. This is for the ICJ, the International Court of Justice, to decide after South Africa made the petition around this, and so it's for the ICJ to say genocide. But certainly I think there's no doubt, can be no doubt, that the goals of Israel is to make Gaza a place not suitable for living, and to break the bone of Palestinian will to self-determination and even survival in Palestine. Breaking Gaza, as Ghousoon may tell you better than me, Gaza is not only a place, it's also a symbol for Palestinian resistance from I think, if I'm not mistaken, Fatah was, or the PLO, to a large extent, was founded in Gaza. So Gaza is embedded in Palestinian history. So I think these were the goals. And we took on ourselves, of course, we are part, we write in Hebrew. We know that the Israeli public was very much supportive, and still is, most of it, for the war. We know that we will not have a lot of supporters and a lot of sympathy, but we thought that, first of all, even if we don't have sympathy, we are part of the Israeli society, and we speak to this Israeli society, and we speak with Israeli soldier people, and it is important to phrase it in Hebrew for the Israeli society to understand. And of course, the very close relation and cooperation we have with 972 meant that these stories will be, many of them, will be translated into English and have an international impact, as they did. And Donatella mentioned the AI story, the AI story, the Lavender story, which is not only about the use of AI in choosing human targets in Gaza, but the level of what is called in a nice language collateral damage in Gaza, that Israel from the very beginning of the war, the Israeli army allowed to kill 20 civilians for every junior Hamas militant and more than 100 civilian for every senior Hamas militant. These we knew that through international impact and being translated into English, it will have an international impact, and so on Israeli public opinion also. And I want to say, just to finish with, as I told you, I'm now called the veteran journalist, meaning that I'm old, and that's true. I'm more than 35 years in journalism, and I worked in the big news, Israeli news outlets, Yediot Achronot, television, Haaretz. I have many colleagues or people I thought were my friends in the Israeli journalism, and I think the Israeli press, which, as I said in the beginning, is quite even courageous in confronting corruption issues, betrayed its mission, betrayed the mission of journalism during the war. It betrayed this mission on two levels. First of all, it gave completely partial information about the war. It gave very little about the impact of Israeli war on Gaza. I speak Arabic, I hear Arabic. I just had to go to listen to Al Jazeera, Al Arabiya, but mainly Al Jazeera, in order to understand what's going on, even without the political side of it, just to understand, because from Israeli media you just couldn't understand. But the worst thing, and this is the second level, I think Israeli, many, to my unfortunately, very large part of Israeli media were part of the war machine. They were part of inciting against the Palestinian, telling issues like only the hostages could be released only by military force, although we knew from October 8th that this will not be the case, that no one will be released through military force. And we saw that more than 30 or 40 Israeli hostages were killed in Gaza by Israeli strikes, by collateral effect of Israeli strike, so killed by Hamas. But so this was a complete lie, and it was told by analysts and journalists as if it is a fact. Or I have seen, and I couldn't believe, I believed my eyes. I didn't want to believe my eyes, seeing journalists and analysts asking themselves, why do we see still buildings standing in Gaza? Gaza should be flattened. Journalists, analysts, this is a complete betrayal of the work that maybe some of you will do as journalists. This is complete betrayal. And I think in local call, I was fortunate enough to escape this kind of betrayal of this profession that I learned. Again, I wanted to be a poet, but I became a journalist, and I really adore this profession and I think it was betrayed during this war.
Thank you, Meron, for this very passionate and very honest account of the situation. I was myself shocked when I saw a video in which an Israeli journalist was, during the attack on Lebanon, was actually helping the IDF, like sending a grenade. And I thought, this is not right. You know, as a journalist, you should not be doing this, right? So anyway, speaking about journalism, I would like Francesca, also because, you know, we are also talking about an issue that is a very hot issue, also in Italy, not only in Israel-Palestine. And Francesca is a dear friend and a colleague, and we have been following the Middle East for many years. And I would like her to address this issue as a journalist, not so much as a Repubblica journalist, but as a journalist overall, to account for the challenges that we do experience ourselves here in Italy when it comes to this hot potato as the Palestinian-Israeli issue. And even yesterday, I mean, we saw this the double standard at play when we had many newspapers and media outlets were titling, you know, Bloody Palm Sunday, referring to the attack of Russia against Ukrainians, which killed 30 people, and not the same kind of language when it comes to Israel bombing yet another hospital in Gaza. So what do you think, Francesca, about journalism in Italy, double standards, and the challenges of reporting about this?
First of all, thank you very much for having us here. It's a pleasure to be with Donatella. As she was talking, I started thinking we met in Doha ages ago. I mean, anyway. So, but it's a great pleasure to be here with students, but also with some of the best colleagues of the Italian press, international press. So, I will share some of the thoughts that I shared with them in these months. I want to start saying that for me, I don't know, Lucia, Roberto, Clark, but this has been the most challenging assignment of my career. Not only because it was so long. We have been going in and out from Israel-Palestine for 18 months. I don't know how many times I went, 10, 12, 15, I lost. But it's not because of this. It's because yesterday we were discussing about this with Roberto in Perugia in the final panel of the festival in Italian. Every single word that we wrote, every single word that Lucia had to say on TV has been a challenge. So if you use the word jihadi or militiaman, or if you use terrorist, or if you use militant, it's different. So each time you write, you have to stop, finish your article, and go through the article again, and read it again. Am I using the right words? And then sometimes you wake up the day after, and you did use the right words, but the people who did the title did use the wrong ones, so you got the blame for something that you didn't do. So again, it is a challenging assignment. Double standards. Yes, there are double standards. And again, I will pick from something that we were talking about yesterday in Perugia, in Italy, but also in Europe, in France. The debate is very much shaped by the diaspora, the Jewish diaspora. And the diaspora I would say in Europe in general, I know in Italy, is not as shaped. It's not gray, it's black and white. So when you go to Israel, you find many different positions. They have a very clear position. And there are many other layers within the Israeli society. But if you come here, it's either you are on one side or you are on the other side. And this is something that I experienced myself as a journalist, but I was very glad that somebody quite important, I would say a political official, which it was an off-the-record conversation, so I cannot tell you the name, but I was talking to somebody quite important who got attacked a lot in the last 18 months. in Jerusalem, and he told me exactly the same. I mean, here I work with the Israelis, no problem. I mean, we can criticize each other, we can talk, we do not agree, but it doesn't mean I am anti-Semitic. I'm just against you. When you go back to Italy, people attack you just because there are no shapes. There are no shades. It's always with us or against us. So when it comes to double standards, I think that the diaspora played a very, very big role. And something else that we did. Yes, we did mistakes. We all did mistakes. I mean, going back and thinking about these 18 months, we did mistakes. I think that the biggest mistake that I did for sure, was forgetting October the 6th. I'm not forgetting, it was always there. I mean, I wrote about the siege of Gaza, these people coming from the siege of Gaza, but there was such a flood of information. I mean, especially in the first week, not the first 2 weeks. Lucia was there, Clark were there. We were trying to get to the south. We got into these villages and there was, I arrived there on October the 8th and there were still dead bodies in the streets. So somehow that's the main story if you work for a daily, okay? I mean, the villages going there. So you're right, yes, there is Gaza, there is the siege of Gaza, but that's always in the background. So we somehow, at the very beginning, the main story was the south of Israel. And then slowly, yes, we gained back the perspective, okay? We stopped with the shock and we started, okay, I'm writing about the siege of Gaza, I should write a little bit more. I mean, so I don't think we forgot about it. I really don't think we forgot it. I didn't forget. I know that many people in this room did not forget about it. But yes, the center of the coverage was what happened in the south of Israel. We gained it back. And then we had to face one problem, which is huge, massive. We couldn't get into Gaza. None of us in this room went to Gaza. And somehow I'm also happy that I didn't go to Gaza because I didn't want to go with the IDF. I was not offered, so I didn't have the choice. I didn't have to make this choice, which would have been difficult. But I know that then if I go to Jenin, as I did go, if I go to Tulkarem, but even if I go to Ramallah, I'm free to say that I did not go with the IDF in Gaza. Like I just came back from Lebanon, and I've been talking to people in Dahye, and they were like, so did you come to the south of Lebanon with the IDF? And no, I didn't. So I tried to keep my independence. So this was the first major problem. We couldn't get into Gaza. And it's still a problem. So we did try to talk to NGOs, people. I did talk many times with the parish in Gaza. So we tried to look for eyes on Gaza. Sometimes we found it, sometimes we didn't. Another big mistake, we put aside, I would not say forgot, but put aside the West Bank. Okay, because, and this is not us as Italian media, everybody put aside the West Bank. I mean, Lucia did a great job on the West Bank, but on Italian TV, but there was somebody else doing the Israeli side, so it was easier somehow, but she did an amazing job on the West Bank. But there was a Peace Now report which came out last week. We talked about this in Perugia. Again, Israel seized more land from the West Bank, Palestinian land from the West Bank in the last 18 months, more land than in the last previous 20 years. So this was a big issue, and with big issue, we did not report enough about it because all eyes were on Gaza. So first all eyes were on the south of Israel, then all eyes were on Gaza, and somehow we left it aside. Yes, we went back, I did go back, I did do it. But if I could go back, I would, in time, I would do more the West Bank. Okay, that was a mistake. Something just to put it into perspective, to go back to the first point, how difficult it was. We did mistake, I did mistakes, but whatever we did, or whatever we would have done, it would never have been enough for both sides. And this is something that we were discussing here in Perugia with Lucia. So I got attacked by the Palestinian side, of course, for talking to the Israeli, for going back to the kibbutz, for talking to hostages. I mean, in the hostages communities, there are some amazing people. Amazing. I mean, Rachel Erz Goldberg is one of the most amazing people I ever met in my life. Why I should not go and talk to her? So I got attacked for talking to her by the Palestinians. I got attacked by the Jewish, especially the Jewish side, especially the diaspora. The day I went to Eli, when Trump got elected and Netanyahu announced that the new ambassador to the US would be a settler from Eli, I went to Eli to try to explain what kind of mentality this person was going to bring to the US. He was the representative of the Jewish state, but he was also the representative of the settlers of the West Bank. So, I mean, I got attacked because that was considered an anti-Israel article, because I went to Eli and I said it's a settlement, and it's one of the settlement that is growing more, that receives more money, that is more important, and these people think this, and this. So whatever I did or I would have done, it would not be enough. We did something good, and I'm proud to say that we did something good, on which was not recognized in Italy many times. We got attacked, but again, you didn't do enough, you didn't, come on, we did something. Not enough, but we did something. I remember, and that's also the beginning of me being close to this amazing, wonderful team of people. In the November issue of Il Venerdì della Repubblica, we were the first ones to write an in-depth, long and painful article on the state of the so-called peace movement in Israel. So where do these people go from now? And I quoted you, we talked with May, A Land for All, and the picture, the main picture was a beautiful picture taken by Oren in Kibbutz Be'eri. You told me you should run this picture. It was a sticker which said peace, and in the middle of the sticker there was a bullet. And that picture itself said the entire story. So we did something good. So I ran this feature. I was the first journalist in Italy to write a feature about 972 and local call. I wrote about the refusenik, which is the story now. People who refuse to serve in the armies. Absolutely, this story is going to be key in the coming months. I did it together with my colleague from Avvenire, Lucia Capuzzi. I must say that the religious press, and I'm not saying it because Roberto from Osservatore Romano is here, but the religious press, Avvenire and Osservatore Romano in Italy did an amazing job in covering this crisis. So, yeah, we could have done better, but we tried it. We did mistakes, and we did good things. It would be nice if both sides could say it, but the fact that we are attacked by both sides, it's a good thing.
Yeah, thank you for speaking with such a honesty, Francesca, and also thank you for underlining that one of the things that is mostly under attack these days is peace. I mean, it's becoming also a word that we cannot even mention, you know. It looks like a bad word, you know. It looks like everything is militarized, from journalism to education. You know, our job also is in danger because we are called upon being militants in terms of like being polarized and supporting something which is like warfare climate, which we do not want to. right? So thank you also for underlining this, because I feel it's important to be proud of speaking about working for peace instead of working for war. And I want to do another quick round with them and then open the floor to questions. I really would like to ask Ghousoon, since also Francesca mentioned the importance of the West Bank as a neglected story, especially in international press. So what are the challenges of reporting within such an environment, you know, like an environment that constantly calls you to be militant, to be part of the war, whereas you have a completely different agenda? And what are the challenges in terms of safety, censorship, but also public opinion when it comes to reporting about West Bank also, not only Gaza?
So I would like just to correct one mistake that I made in terms of numbers, because there's somebody is filming, so I have to be accurate, as I believe in accurate and fair journalism. So regarding our numbers, I said up until October 23, we had some like 20,000
Views.
readers, monthly readers. Between October 23 and October 24, we got to more than 220,000 readers. And now, from October 24 until now, we are maintaining an average of 120,000. And this is a challenge. Like, this is one of our challenges now, and I think everybody is facing it, not only us, is that the interest in Gaza is going down. People are tired. There's, we call it in media, compassion fatigue. Everybody is tired. No one wants to read about more, you know, suffering in Gaza, because the situation is extremely hard even to describe. I think it's happening only on social media. I myself, I see less social media on Gaza because, you know, it breaks your heart. It doesn't, you know, you can't really function on the day you see these images from this, you know, ongoing genocide. So this is one big challenge that, you know, we are really struggling about how to keep all eyes on Gaza. And, you know, we're thinking about maybe different formats, maybe about, you know, having shorter pieces, because our pieces tend to be a bit long, shorter pieces, more videos. You know, it's, again, it's work in progress, and we're trying, but we, you know, this is one of the biggest challenges, how to keep all eyes, you know, on Gaza in order to end this war. Like, that is the main urgent task, I guess. The other challenge is how to keep an eye on everything else that is also important, and to connect the dots between the different things that are happening all across Israel, Palestine, between the, you know, the river and the sea. And, you know, we you know, while we covered Gaza intensively, and not only coverage, it's covered by journalists from Gaza, and I think this is more important than the coverage itself, is who's covering the story and how it's being told. We keep an eye on the West Bank, the ethnic cleansing on the West Bank, the Palestinian population inside Israel, and the political persecution against them. We keep an eye on the what left of the Israeli left. You know, even from the families of the hostages, we amplified those who called to end the war, and not just for, you know, first for the sake of getting their sons or daughters back, but also for a political engagement between Israelis and Palestinians. We are obsessed with the refuseniks. Our reporter, Oren Ziv, goes after, you know, every guy, girl or boy, 18, 19, who decides not to serve in the army. He always does beautiful profiles of them, which is published on 972 and Local Call. So connecting the dots is who we are, because this has been done before October 23, and it's still, you know, being done. But it could be a challenge sometimes, because again, we're a small team with so much that is happening. The other challenge is being a binational media outlet when our societies are so have never been that pluralized as now. Now again, we are a binational media project. We believe in accurate and fair journalism, but our journalism goes between, could go to activism as well. But this binational project is based on real principles of justice, equity, and freedom. We're not just gathering Jews and Palestinians to chat and talk and whatever. It's with very clear commitment against occupation, apartheid, the ongoing war. We know what are the principles of any solution that could happen in Israel-Palestine. We could discuss what sort of solution, but the principles are clear. And I see our project as a model of co-resistance. We are together, perhaps the Jewish-Israeli friends and colleagues are still a very small minority in the Israeli society, but together we're trying to change this reality and to break that cycle somehow. We haven't been very successful so far, but wish us luck. And I think we have no, we don't really have the privilege to give up and just sit and we have to keep going. The third challenge is censorship. Meron maybe will talk more about the military censorship because he's the expert on it. He has to deal with them all the time. And it's a challenge because you can't publish whatever you want. Israel is the only self-claimed democracy or that has such a law, meaning that every material that has to do with national security, military, it could be also sometimes international relations as well, external, foreign relations, that has to go through the censor. And the censor has the right to either delete it all or partially or whatever. And that is a challenge. But I think the bigger one for me, because that one, there's a law, we have to follow the law. 972 tried for many years not to submit anything to the censor until they got a phone call that they have to, discussed it with lawyers. The lawyers said, you have to. And we're doing it because we can't not do it. You can go to our site and write censorship, and there's an editorial statement on it, on what we did, why we're doing it. And we also have an annual report on censorship. We go to the court using the Act of Information law, and we demand the information from the censor, and we monitor the work of the censor. So at least, we're trying to keep saying to the world, like at least once a year to our readers, that there is a censor, and that is the result of their work. But what is more scary is the self-censorship. And I think we're all living there in Israel-Palestine. And the self-censorship is more dangerous than the clear one, because it's you not doing certain things because you are not only afraid of the official military censorship, but afraid from the overall atmosphere. And the overall atmosphere is, racist, fascist, it's tough for me as a Palestinian journalist. I think it's extremely tough as well for our Jewish Israeli colleagues who are, a tiny little minority within that atmosphere. And with it also comes, the comeback of the judicial overhaul in Israel, which was the big news before October 23. And there are series of laws that are coming, I think, not only to restrict the work of the media that is, working in Israel-Palestine. You saw the ban on Al Jazeera, but it's done also by Israel and the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank. So, both are good in restricting media freedoms. It's it's not only, on, banning certain channels, or it's about the whole space. The space is shrinking, like on us. And there are, few so far, with the judicial overhaul coming back in full force, there are few laws that will impact the whole media regulation as well. Not only telling you what to say and what, but things will be regulated. And this is scary, and of course we're following it. I don't know how it will impact us as a tiny little media outlet. I think so far Israel is going for the big giants, for the big fish, not on us, but you could never know how it will go. And the fourth and last, I would say challenge, but it's also a genuine concern, is our colleagues in Gaza. So far 209 journalists have been killed. All the others are doing their work in impossible conditions. I really don't know how they do it. Like, if I was there, I will not be even able to function under these conditions. And their safety and supporting them is a huge challenge. It's like there's nothing that we can physically do to make the space more safe. But I think the only thing that we can keep doing is just to keep having their voice on 972 and the many other international media networks in English, in Arabic, and of course with the help of Local Call, we do it in Hebrew.
Thank you so much. I would like to thank you so much for underlining all these issues, and I would like to connect with military censorship, which you have mentioned, because it's not so well known, especially not, I believe, definitely not in Italy, but in an international landscape, that Israel does censor stories. For example, the AI investigation was had to be run through the censors. So maybe Meron can talk about this, and also because some people, after learning that actually you have military censorship, they started asking, so how is it possible that they allowed a story like the AI story to be published? So maybe you can give us precious insights on this.
First of all, as Ghousoon mentioned, the law in Israel is again, talking about colonialism, is a nice heritage that British colonial rule left us in Palestine, Israel-Palestine, that everything, every piece of information that has to do with national security, army, some kind of foreign relation, has to go to the military censorship. Otherwise, it could be a criminal offense if you don't, and if you disregard what the censorship has said, it could lead to criminal charges, or, as I remember, as eyewitness myself, when I was working in a small newspaper that does not exist anymore, called Hadashot News, that the newspaper was closed for 3 days in front of my eyes. The policeman came into the newsroom and told us to stop working because we published a photo of a Palestinian captured by the Israeli army and then killed after he was captured.
It was
So-
bus 300 case?
Yes, what's called Line 300 bus that was hijacked in Israel, and the kidnappers were taken alive, and one of them was killed later, and a photo of one of our journalists then showed it. So I saw it with my own eyes, and of course, as Ghousoon said, the big problem, and according to our in the last year, if I remember, the statistic well. I think there were 600 pieces that were completely deleted by the censorship, and more than 1,500 in which the censorship interfered. Now, what makes this, and as Ghousoon said, the important thing is what you don't write about from the beginning, because you know that there's no point even in gathering certain information, because the censorship will not allow it. So it's just a waste of time, and you just put yourself in risk and your sources in risk in gathering information that is sensitive, but you know that at the end you just cannot publish it. Why was the Lavender story allowed with some correction, with something was deleted, but why it was allowed is a big question. I remember I was completely in shock when I got the call from the censor telling me that, okay, I have a few correction here, a few correction there, but you can publish it. I was completely in shock. I was sure that half of it will be out. There could be a few reasons, but again, it's a speculation. One is that I think what Yuval did is, he just, it was not a leak. It was the main pipe that was broken. It's not, it was not just a leak. He just broke the main pipe and all the information got out, and they understood that there's no use to, put a blackout on something that all the other information is out. The other explanation, which is more conspirative, and I'm not so much into conspiracy, but this is also possible, that Israel wanted the world to know that it is spying on every Palestinian, that every Palestinian is under surveillance, that every Palestinian is on a list, that AI is following every Palestinian in Gaza and also in the West Bank, that Israel is using this kind of collateral damage very vast in order. So the aim was maybe to make Palestinian fear. It's a possibility, of course. I don't have sources inside the censorship. I know few people. I talk to them, but on very formal acquaintance. Not so. I don't really know. The two explanations are possible, and there's also maybe a third one, which is when I was in Perugia, I met a few Syrian activists who were active against the regime of Bashar al-Assad, and we talked about how he was asking us why did they let you publish, and I told him that the Israeli government, or the Israeli society in general, it is important for Israel to portray itself as the bastion of democracy in the Middle East, the only democracy in the Middle East. Bashar al-Assad did not have this, did not think that what the image of Syria should be, that Syria is the most advanced democracy in the Middle East. Israel enjoys a lot of international support and legitimacy from being portrayed as this only democracy in the Middle East. And whatever the reasons are, we are trying to use this some
Cracks.
these cracks in the wall, there are cracks. You don't know why these cracks exist, who made them, and why they were made. But you are using these cracks. And we are using these cracks as long as it's possible for us to go on. Just one line. Ghousoon mentioned new laws. There is this a law is being discussed in the Israeli parliament, saying that I think something like five years of jail for anyone publishing information that might be used by the ICC or by the ICJ against Israel. So now, theoretically, and we know that some of Yuval's and other, Oren Ziv and other pieces are under scrutiny in The Hague, in the legal processes against Israel in The Hague. So theoretically, we could, if these pieces would have been published, would be published after this law will pass, we could face 5 years in jail.
I wonder, on this very point, I wonder what will happen to the soldiers, because many of the soldiers actually did post evidence on their own social media feeds, right? So
It could be used by the ICC or ICJ. So without you going to the ICC, if you put any information out there and is used, then you will be facing criminal charges. The Israeli academia is going nuts as well, is going crazy about it, because it could be Israeli academics doing it. One of the most read pieces on local call in Hebrew was with the title, "This is genocide by an Israeli Holocaust researcher." His name is
Amos Goldberg.
So again, if somebody will use it at the UN or ICC, but this didn't pass yet, and they didn't they didn't vote on it yet, so hopefully it will not happen. But it's scary.
yeah, journalism. I want just to ask you something about war on journalism, because this is also a war on journalism, on your profession.
Yeah, I will not say against us. I mean, it's against the journalists in Gaza. We were discussing this. I mean, it's like over 200. We don't have an exact number because, I mean, who is a journalist today? An influencer, a TikToker, a producer from Jazeera. I mean, somebody who writes for 972 on local call. But, I mean, the number which was estimated in Gaza is that over between 209 and 250 journalists, in Perugia, the numbers that I collected are that between 209 and 250 journalists were killed in Gaza in these 18 months, and more or less there were 1,000 journalists in Gaza. Again, I did not double check these informations, but these are the numbers that came. So it is a war on journalism with many faces. This is, of course, the worst. There is only one thing that I want to add for 1 second, because it came to my mind before. Il venerdì di Repubblica ran a cover story a few months ago, like in spring, 1 year ago. And the title was Due popoli, due stati, due scrittori. So 2 people, 2 states, 2 authors. And I interviewed an Israeli writer who was supposed to be, before October 7th, you would have considered him a leftist. And my colleague in Ramallah did the same with a Palestinian writer. And we talked to each other, so we asked the same questions. We tried to do twins articles. And when the cover ran, they both got totally pissed off at us. The Israeli got pissed off at me, the Palestinian got pissed off at my colleague. And so he refused to answer my messages. Then after I called him he answered after 3 or 4 days, and he told me, your article was great. You did not change a single word. You were able to put in 130 lines, 3 hours of conversation with You are a journalist student, so you know it's a challenge. You speak to somebody for 3 hours and you have 130 lines. What do you put? What do you just leave it? Anyway, so he said, your article was great, but the fact that you put me together with him is not okay. I don't like it. I would never have accepted. And the Palestinian writer said exactly the same thing to my colleague in Ramallah. So the core point of this story is that we are talking about two people who do not look to each other, with some exceptions, in the eyes. They do not recognize the other as equal, as a human being, as somebody that you can talk to. I mean, you wrote everything perfect, just I didn't want to be next to him.
Thank you for raising this point, Francesca, and I think it's time now for those who are here. I have a mic which I can share. If people, yes. Maybe collect, let's collect questions.
Thank you very much. This has been fascinating. Just for Ghousoon and Meron, please don't give up hope. Your presence here is hope. You are really an inspiration. Please don't think that what you're doing is useless. I'm from Lebanon, and I've learned a lot in the last year and a half, with things that I thought I didn't know. Reading Plus 972, and I subscribe to Haaretz. I don't read Hebrew. But my question is actually to Francesca. Since we are in Italy and we're addressing Italian journalists, and we have Italian journalists here, I think there is also self-censorship that's happening in the West. It's not only in Israel that's happening, so I think it would be nice to hear from you about it. That's number one. Number two, I think whereas the Israelis, at least some Israelis are courageous enough to talk about what Israel is doing, I mean the responsibility of Israel, I think there needs to be more courage from the Western journalists to talk about the complicity of the West, because I think it's very easy for the West to put all the blame on Israel, but Israel can't do anything without the complicity of the West, and I don't see it in the Western media. And the third thing, thank you for your honesty, but I think there's one big thing that the Western media did after October 7th, which is huge, and that is amplifying the propaganda of the IDF, with all the babies burned, the heads cut, et cetera, and silence about the Hannibal Directive. And I think this also played a huge role in terms of rallying the public, the Western public, behind the Israeli government in committing the genocide. Over.
Thank you. I'll gather a few more questions.
Thank you so much for this amazing talk and this amazing opportunity. My questions piggyback on what she said. Basically, as we've seen these past 2 years, that Western journalism and Western media has played a gargantuan role in manufacturing consent for all violence against Palestinians, of erasing the lines between victim and oppressor, between innocent and a target, and basically also like refraining from reporting completely on all acts of terror that happen in Gaza every day. So, what precedent does these past few years in media and journalism do this set for the future, for these future wars? And what about the sanctity of independent journalism? And as you said, that 200 journalists have been killed in Gaza, independent journalists, and they have been indiscriminately targeted. So, what kind of precedent has been set? Does this war set for the future? And also, and the question that I had was that you guys talked about peace, and that Palestinian journalists or Palestinian people in general and Israeli people not being able to see eye to eye with each other. Even if the war were to end tomorrow, let's say that, what kind of future do you see after the atrocities that have taken place and the radicalization of an entire generation, not just in Gaza, but everywhere else in the Muslim world as well? Because I can talk about myself. I wake up every day to new images of people, of limbs, of scattered limbs, and children being beheaded, and new wars, new bombs and everything. there's great animosity towards Israel as a state. Also because of the conflation of, with very wrong conflation of Judaism with Israel, amongst people who are not as educated about everything like that, like this, there is an association that has been established, more anti-Semitism, I would say now, than ever before. So I think those are my questions. I mean, what do you have to say about that?
Wow. Someone else? Yes.
Okay, bear with me because I would like to add on a little bit as to what Sofiane said, and I think as a 21-year-old, but as well as a communication student, I'm in existential crisis at the moment, because as we were discussing today in my class with Professor Donatella, we watched a talk about, forgive me, I can't remember her name at the moment, who was studying AI as a tool of warfare, and she said a very interesting phrase, which is warfare is also looking at the internet, or in other words, is looking at technologies, looking at everything that surrounds us. And I think for me, as a student, as a 22-year-old who is growing up in this media technology world, it feels like everything that is surrounding me, whether it's tech, whether it's corporations, maybe even where I'm studying, it feels like everything is kind of reinforcing or feeding into geopolitical conflict warfare. And I think that, you know, you mentioned all eyes on Gaza, yet I feel like ever since this has been happening since Nakba, since the British decided to give Jewish Israel Palestinian land, there has never been more eyes on Gaza, yet that has been very quite evident that it's almost quite literally desensitized. And even if we look at no other land in a way, I remember, for instance, I watched a very nice movie or documentary Off Frame by AKA Revolution Until Victory by Mohammed Yaqoubi, which was spreading awareness, but it was also very motivating and powerful, and it gave me hope. And that was something beautiful, whereas I have been avoiding to watch No Other Land because from everything that I've heard, it's completely hopeless and it leaves you empty. And it's like, this is the narrative that won in a word. And it's like, it's continuing this media that also we're spreading awareness, but we're also in a way continuing the desensitization, the numbingness, and so I guess as journalists, how do you feel moving in this world, doing the work that you're doing, but as well as, okay, what can we really do? What steps, what actions? We've been speaking, we've been showing, but then what? What now? Thank you.
Maybe you should try to answer. Yeah.
Okay.
I start.
I don't know who wants to start.
Maybe I start with the first question. I lost the second. I didn't write it properly, so I will ask you to repeat. Very, very short, because I want to give the floor to them. Self-censorship. Yes, it's a major issue. I mean, Meron mentioned it. It was a big issue for them. It's a big issue for us. Yes, absolutely. And you have to stop and think and rethink and do it better. And yes, but it is an issue, and it has been an issue for the last 18 months. I think we did not overcome it, but we have been working on it I have been working on it for 18 months. So that's all I can say. Amplifying the propaganda from IDF. I'm sure somebody did it. Maybe we all did it at a certain point because we didn't have access to Gaza. But please, this is not the only thing that we did, and we did not do it in a major scale. I mean, I would not consider myself a propagandist. I went to Kerem Shalom once with Clark. Remember that day was super hot, and yes, it was a huge, massive propaganda mission. I mean, they were showing us crazy thing, and they kept on saying there is no hunger in Gaza, there is no problem in Gaza, it's Hamas stealing. None of us in that room reported what they said. We took the chance to go to Kerem Shalom because it's a closed military area, So it was a chance to go and see how the chain works. I did not write what they said. Okay, I did write one line according to them, and then, but according to the UN, according to MSF, according to the International Red Cross. So the fact that I was sitting in that room doesn't mean that I get all the propaganda that they try to feed us. And did we do mistakes? Yes, we did. Are we trying to do better? We are, but I think they know better than me.
I will try to answer the question regarding what will happen after the war. Let's see the war over. Yes, I think first of all, the fact is that Israel today is the less secure place for Jews in the world. It was supposed to be the other way around. Israel was founded in order to give Jews a safe place. Now it's the other way around. October 7, of course, was the peak, but still is. And I think it is also, as you said, putting Jews around the world in a very uncomfortable situation, because they are asked by the community and by the state of Israel to identify themselves with Israel, and whether they believe in that or not, many of them do, and they are identified by many in the world as being part of or supporter of Israel's action in Gaza, and this is doing them harm. And I think Israel, if it wants to keep the Jews around the world safe, it should end the war and make peace and end occupation. This is for the sake of Israeli Jews living in Israel, and for the sake of Jews living in the diaspora. Last thing, yes, I think there could be, very probable that there will be a generation of Palestinian, or not only Palestinian, Arab and Muslim, and maybe not only Arab and Muslim, around the world that will not forget what Israel is doing now. And this is also, I think, Israel is playing, I'm talking it not as a propaganda, not as a demagogic thing. I think Israel is risking its own future by continuing this war. It's risking its own future because if this war goes on, and if these massacres and genocidal acts will go on, Israel is risking its own future.
I don't have a better answer, but regarding the future, it's grim, and I echo exactly what you say, and I feel it at least once or twice a week when I have a moment to think. But I get some hope from the international solidarity with the Palestinians. Yes, it didn't get to the power centers, to governments yet, but that is a process, and it could take time. And maybe the other source of hope could be if we as Palestinians, and when I speak about Palestinians, I mean Palestinians everywhere in the land, West Bank, Gaza, East Jerusalem, inside Israel, we have different status, and legal status. Each one of us, there are some less privileged and some that are more privileged, and that is, basically what is the apartheid system is all about. I think we need to take agency as well. What is very annoying about when people discuss the day after is that nobody is talking to the Palestinians about the day after. Of course, everybody is talking to Hamas regarding the hostages, But nobody is talking, you know, I don't know, who will rule Gaza, you know, the construction, how do you get rid of all of this waste in Gaza? You know, it's who will, you know, be in charge of the population, education, health. Nobody is talking to the Palestinians. The Emirati and the Qataris and the Egyptians are talking to the Americans, and the Europeans maybe are involved somehow. I'm not sure how, because, you know, they're silent since Trump is back on the stage. But nobody is talking to the Palestinians. And it's also us who need to look at our own political system that has basically collapsed, maybe. You know, can you imagine a nation that is half of it or part of it is fighting the world's, you know, biggest army machine now in Gaza, not being under one political leadership? Hamas and Fatah, you know, they don't talk. The two main political parties have a dispute. You know, it was tough enough to have that dispute long, you know, before October 23, before the war, under occupation, and having, you know, one, you know, a clear apartheid system imposed on them, the others under, you know, siege and living in a big jail for so many years, and still the two main parties are not, you know, united under some sort of united leadership. So that, if that happens at some stage, it could give some hope. But that is also sort of frustration. So I don't know if I answered the question, but
I think at this point I just want to thank the panelists for such a wonderful showcase of dignity, professionalism, honesty, which was very much needed. Thank you so much for the amazing work you're doing. Keep up with the good work, and we should follow, you know, and be proactive also.
just read us, and when you read us, you will read lots of Meron stuff.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. No, è stato molto intenso. Molto